Jacksonville, the child was born who couldn't sit still. 86 years later with no regret. You know that man can't sit still yet. The Great Depression couldn't get him down. He worked for his dad's store in town, collecting money in small amounts. Poor whites and blacks in their furniture accounts. Stetson Kennedy wants us all to be free. Stetson Kennedy wants us all to be free. As he'd collect, he'd talk to folks. He'd hear legends, tales, songs, and jokes. Now this fine treasure he'd record and write. He was colorblind, didn't see black and white. Writer's project for the WPA. Zora Neale Hurston, he earned his pay. Crackers and blacks, they talk for hours. It was a barefoot history, this land of flowers.
From WBRN Radio, beaming on the Boston Red Network, the episode The Monday Morning Quarterback on the 24th of February, 2020. This is our extended edition, which means it is recorded in the PM, not in the AM. Normally it's in the AM. But nonetheless, we'll be quarterbacking events. A little bit of quarterbacking on the talk shows. Not as much, but we'll do some of it. We've sort of been crowded here with the schedule. Incidentally, speaking of schedule, the next debate will be in South Carolina. That'll be for the South Carolina primary event, which will take place this weekend on Saturday, and we'll have more of that information probably on the week that was, as that event will be over, which will mean another extended edition. Now, and then we have Super Tuesday. We'll probably wrap that up on either Wednesday night or Super Tuesday. Tuesday night or Wednesday, depending on when the results come in. One of the things, looking to South Carolina, it's a big event for Joe Lunchbox Biden. Not so much for the other candidates, other than the candidates at the bottom. That means Amy Klobuchar and the South Bend Mayor Petey, former South Bend Mayor Petey. There at the bottom of the situation. South Carolina is different. You have Joe Lunchbox Biden's expected to do well there. He could win it, or Bernie Sanders could win it. One of those two, basically, there. Tom Steyer would not surprise me. He could come out as second. We really don't know on that one. But he's been polling rather well, around 19-20% in South Carolina. But Joe Biden has the organization there, and he has the personnel to probably put him over the top. But the question to be asked is, what significance will South Carolina mean? And now, in many of the states, early voting is already taking place. In California, the big states, and Texas. Bernie has been in California, and he's also been in Texas, while some of the other characters, like little P.D. out in Colorado and in Virginia, places of that nature. That's a vast amount of states that will be voting on Super Tuesday. So thus, that will be the biggest pot there. And of course, then you have Bloomberg. We'll talk a little about Bloomberg and some of his paid workers that work Twitter and social media. From the Los Angeles Times, a very good article on that particular situation let me get you a little bit up to date. Dr. Jameson, excuse me, that used to be at NASA, retired from there after 30-something years, was awarded the Medal of Freedom by President Barack Obama. And she started out as one of these women that were basically human computers. She was raised in West Virginia, and that was a time when West Virginia had a more significant impact on African Americans. She was a very intelligent young lady. She was effectively out of high school at a very, very early age and went on to a university. And then she was hired at the predecessor of the NASA's, whatever they call it now, their tabulation bureau, whatever it was. In other words, they were working out various functions with pencil and paper in those days. In fact, when John Glenn did his little ride around the world there, at that time they did have computers, but he asked her to work it out by hand so they get the trajectory correct. And she continued on. She hired on there, I believe, in 1962, and she was there for 30 years. So that's a very long time in the sense that she was there through the 70s and through the 80s. And she passed at 101, 102 years old. There she was born, I believe, in 1918, or perhaps it was anyway. Nonetheless, we'll have a full remembrance, as they now call it, of her. May she rest in peace, a principal person. Bring you up to date a little bit, and we'll go back to this. The coronavirus, of course, is known as COVID-19. We'll get that right, its technical name. We put a hashtag up, and it was spelled incorrectly. But anyway, we will correct that particular situation. We also have a Numbers Man presentation that will be up shortly. That is on our Numbers Man channel, which is our macroeconomics. And also we have an open source report on open source elections and the firm Shadow. Anyway, the Dow was down today 1,033, and the NASDAQ down 330. That was a negative there for them, all on worries of this virus situation. We'll talk a little bit more about that, and we'll get that information from the LA Times, and then we'll go back to the Washington Post, and we'll talk about a recent Supreme Court decision on the public. I think we'll do it right now since we're here. Remove the last remaining obstacle to immigrants' wealth tests, the public charge. This is on the 21st by Robert Barnes of the Post. Supreme Court Friday night removed, this is Friday night, removed the remaining obstacle to Trump's plan to implement a new wealth test, making a rule making it easier to deny immigrant residency or admission to the U.S. if they've depended on public assistance programs. Although legal challenges will continue on the merits of the policy in lower courts, the justice, again, this is a 5-4 to remove the last remaining judicial order blocking the new standard from going into effect. The rule, which administration plans to begin enforcing it began today, replaced decades of understanding and would place a burden on poor immigrants from non-English speaking countries. Another obviously thing to keep people like that out. This goes in line with what the UK wants to do after Brexit, have a financial test for people that are coming there. A judge blocked the administration implementing a new standard in Illinois, and Supreme Court decision removes that order. Now, as is common in such emergency this is an emergency application there from the Supreme Court. I assume it was a stay. Anyway, by the 5-4 vote last month, the court had gotten rid of an injunction imposed by a judge in New York. that blocked the changes elsewhere in the country. Now, one of the things is a federal judge in a district can issue a nationwide injunction. The court's liberal justice dissented then and on Friday, and Justice Sotomayor said the court was violating its own rule about when to step into a legal process. It's hard to say what is more troubling, that the government would seek extraordinary relief as a matter of course, or that the courts would grant it. Sotomayor wrote, the rule established new criteria for those who can be considered dependent on the U.S. government for benefits, public charges, that's the old term out there, in the words of the law, and thus ineligible for green cards, path to citizenships. They were supposed to start, in October last year. Under the new policy, immigrants would be suspect if they're in the U.S. Legally and use public benefits. So that would be food sufficiency, food stamps, housing assistance, or Medicaid. Too often are and deemed likely to someday rely on them. Well, that could happen to anyone. They could get a job and there's not a job. The new criteria provides positive and negative factors for immigration officials to weigh as they decide on a green card application. Negative includes if a person is unemployed, dropped out of a high school, or is not fluent in English. Again, this mirrors what the Johnson Tory party in England wants to do. Opponents of the rule argue that punishing legal immigrants who need financial help endangers the health and safety of immigrant families, including U.S. citizen children, and would force it potentially millions of dollars in emergency health care and other costs onto local and state governments, business, hospitals, and food banks. No doubt about that. The rule change brought legal challenges filed around the country. Some have imposed nationwide judges again. The Trump administration objected in last month's decision. This is old Neil Gorsuch there, said nationwide injunctions have gotten out of hand, as the brief and furious history of regulations before us illustrates. The routine issues of universal injunction is patently unworkable, sowing chaos for litigants, the government, the courts, and all those affected by conflicting decisions. But Sotomayor said it was not the case here. A judge in Illinois had issued a limited injunction, and the U.S. Court of Appeals, that's the seventh that sets in Chicago, scheduled a hearing on the issue next week. She said that this is a normal, and that is a normal process, indicating that conservative judges were indulging in an impatient administration. She said that it's a normal, impatient administration. Claiming one emergency after another, the government has recently sought, and this is usually not what the government would do, this is what a plaintiff would do, recently sought stays on unprecedented numbers of cases, demanding immediate action and consuming limited court resources in each, she wrote, and for every successive application, of course, its cry of urgency rings increasingly hollow. No doubt about that, because the Seventh Circuit would have had a hearing on that this week. The court has become too quick to agree with the government, she said. I fear that this discrepancy in her treatment erodes a fair and balanced decision-making process that the court must strive to protect. U.S. citizens, immigration services, Homeland Security that process green cards and citizenship applications said on its website it will implement the new rule today. Illinois has the sixth largest immigrant population in the U.S., some 1.8 million people after California, Texas, New York, Florida, and New Jersey. About half are not U.S. citizens, according to census estimates. Immigrants account for 14% of the state's population. Fairly high population, I'm assuming that is in the state of Illinois. Now let's jump over to the L.A. Times. We'll do the coronavirus, and then we'll get back to the paid tweeters by Mini Mike, as he called him. Anyway, this is a coronavirus update here. Via the Associated Press today, Republic of Korea, it's normally called the South, we call it Republic of Korea, reported the largest jump in cases, new cases of 231 at this particular time to 833. Now it's over 1,000. China also reported 409 cases, raising the total on the mainland to 77,150. This number will change, no doubt about it. With our modeling, it could go up to very close to 100,000 people before it's all over. 150 new deaths from, this is the COVID-19. Let me just spell this out. We'll put it as COVID, A-19 illness, raised the total to 5,592 deaths are there, and that is hovering around 4 days there. That is in China. Massive situation. Will be province there. Significant jumps outside of China. Now Japan, where cases were from this Diamond Princess cruise liner, where nearly 1/5 of the 3,711 passenger crew became infected. More than 140 people, new cases in Korea, and near Duji. That's a city of 2.5 million, and nothing to laugh about. And that was around a religious sect. A lady evidently did not want to be tested, and she went to some type of function and spread it to others. But this is a different situation. Health workers also screening 9,000 followers of this is Dejik branch of the GJ Church of the Jesus. This is where a woman in her 60s attended 2 services before testing. Okay, she tested for it. There's 2 ways of anyway. Some say that she refused, and some said she was tested. Anyway, that's not a big deal there. And they've scattered working hours in various other places. In Iran, 43 cases in the country after reporting its first case on Wednesday. United Arab Emirates, new cases including Iranian tourists. The number of cases have closed their borders. And then we go to Italy. That's around Milan. Announced that the number of confirmed cases at 110. It now has 150 cases. They're all going up outside of Asia. There's no link with anyone from Asia. But they had to cancel Carnival. Incidentally, tomorrow, happy Fat Tuesday. And then it will be Ash Wednesday. I guess that's when they had a debate. For the Catholics in the audience there, it wasn't immediately known that 2 infected had participated in the Carnival festivals. As Italy scrambling, canceling the Carnival. Cinemas were ordered shuttered in Milan. Legendary La Scala. Anyway, it's focused on China, but from what the World Health Organization says, it could show up anywhere, basically speaking. There was a plane from Korea, had 188 passengers, landed at Ben Gurion Airport, that is in Tel Aviv, and was taxied away from the terminal while authorities allowed 11 Israelis to enter the country. The plane was returned to Korea with the rest of the passengers, and the Korean Foreign Minister, Republic of Korea, that is, registered strong protest with the Israeli government. That is a Yahop news agency said that. So we have these listed here: Hong Kong, Thailand, and Singapore. Quarantines are going on there. This is from the LA Times. Anyway, that is the COVID-19 virus that is officially known these days, and it moves out here. So we make sure that we get the name right, and we will on our reference and in our internet feeds, because distinguishing from the family of that is again COVID, VICONVID-19. So they finally got around to that. And to Bloomberg and his paid helpers there. Vocal Bernie Sanders supporter in Chicago with 0 followers on the net. A dozen Republicans, and there are some of the digital soldiers of Bloomberg's campaign recruited in California to boost the online profile prior to March the 3rd. Bloomberg's 2020 operation is hiring more than 500 people at a rate of $2,500 a month to text friends and post on social media in support of Mini Mike, as he's called. These deputy field organizations, as the campaign called them, are focusing their efforts on California and its 415 delegates up for grabs, which Bernie will get a lot of those delegates. Looking inside the strategy based on documents reviewed by the Times, interviews with 5 of these organizers, and an examination of social media output shows that many had been using accounts created within the last month for their Twitter posts. At least 2 have openly posted support of other candidates. And unlike the high-profile influencers, the campaign recently hired to create virtual menaces, the vast majority of these organizers have modest personal audiences, and on Twitter some have few as 20 followers. Rather than create their own content, organizers use the exact text, in other words, they get the text from the campaign, and then just whether the behavior complies with the platform's rules. That's what the Times asked there. Let me just get back up here on these suspensions. Rather than create their own, the results have been a stiff outpouring of tweets, Facebook, and Instagram posts with little to no engagement, sometimes half-hearted text messages. Some organizers were so robotic in their tweeting that tweeters suspended their accounts. So that was Friday night after the Times inquiry about whether their behavior complied with platform rules on spam and manipulation. The Bloomberg's campaign tactics has raised questions on whether posts by campaign workers constitute sponsored content, and how social media platforms should regulate non-traditional political advertising, whether hiring attempts with no particular affinity for a candidate is an effective form of electioneering in the first place. The goal, and this is just coverage, this used to be commonly used in the computer industry just to get cover. They would perhaps have someone in a region or city as an agent there, would only be there part-time, but that person would be there, make some phone calls locally to people to get that. The goal of deputy campaign organizers to meet voters everywhere on any platform that they consume their news. That is from Serena Sang. One of the most effective ways of reaching voters is by activating their friends and networks to encourage them to support Mike. The effort, first reported by the Wall Street Journal, represents a few gallons of ocean spending since Bloomberg entered the race. Well, again, this is a very interesting situation. Campaigns aimed at friends and family acquaintances, usually done by volunteers excited about the candidate. That is from Tim Godling, professor at UCLA, who studies political communications and new media. Bloomberg can pay for people to try to convince their social circles, is a sign of strength of Bloomberg's financial resources, but also indicates he may lack organic support. Well, you don't necessarily need organic support. If people see your tweets coming across to the public, they think you're everywhere. The Times reviewed social media posts from some of the 400 deputy campaign organizers whose names and phone numbers appear in a spreadsheet used by Bloomberg to track their progress. They used a Google spreadsheet, was not password protected, big mistake there. After a reporter asked the campaign to verify its authenticity, the document was deleted from its location. Organizers interviewed and requested anonymity because the memo from a supervisor asking them, but they not engaged with the press. Anyway, they had a song here from Barbara Streisand praising Mike. Check out her tweet there. Anyway, at least a half dozen other users post identical tweet. That's not unusual. You see those out there. Who's excited for debate night? Another person put out asking her followers to sign up for debate updates from the Bloomberg campaign. 4 out of 5 organizers interviewed said the promise of money was a primary factor. They went there. One recent college graduate living in Sacramento described himself as adamant support of Bernie, the current front runner there, but he hasn't had a steady stream of income since October. The Bloomberg gig looked like easy money, which evidently it was. Sam Donaldson just nailed it. Bloomberg is the president. We need to unite I guess they're talking about Sam Donaldson to unite our country. He texted one of his friends, and Monday through Outvote, the app organizers used to reach out to their personal network. He drew on language provided to him by the campaign and logged the text as part of Bloomberg's organizing responsibilities. He quickly followed up with a personal addendum: please disregard, vote for Bernie or Warren. Now, that's interesting. I'll have to check on this Sam Donaldson situation here. Sam Donaldson's in retirement in New Mexico. Organizers say securing the work was easy and the vetting process thin. First, you had to send in their resume, while others simply filled out a Google form with their name, contact information, address, link to their Twitter or social media or Facebook accounts, as well as any other social media handles. The applicants' recent social media posts reviewed by the staff for racist or offensive content. They didn't want to get into that, such as supporters for different candidates. Organizers said the Bernie Sanders reporter was asked to remove posts, retweet, and likes in support of Sanders' campaign, but they didn't get rid of him. So thus, you could come up there anyway. Once approved, the organizers completed training for various applications, including Outvote, Hustle, through Talk, and were encouraged to post on social media. There, Hustle and through Talk are the more conventional duties included in campaigns, texting, and phone banking. Outvote is used by many Democratic candidates, recommend specific language to share with friends, etc. Describing the training, one organizer said supervisors explained that the average person has a network of about 750 people on their phone. They tell us, boss, a lot of people. We want you to reach out to those friends that you're comfortable with, talk to them, and then also those friends you might not talk to in a while might be of interest in politics. Training materials are distributed to organizers, emphasize authenticity in communicating with friends. Stay true to how you communicate. If you don't think our text sound like you, change it. For that price, it can be authentic there. They'll redo the strategy a little bit there. When I text my friends, depending on the friend, a lot of people think it's spam, and my account was hacked. The organizer living in LA said once people realize it's actually me who makes these things, it's not spam. They kind of just figure I'm being paid. One organizer, a woman living in Central Coast of California, said she also disclosed her position in the initial text. With campaign strategies changing so quickly, Twitter and Facebook have been tinkering with their rules while playing enforcement on whack-a-mole. Facebook has historically treated political advertising and influencing brand marketing as separate issues, but early this month, after the Bloomberg campaign used a loophole, in mounting a large-scale paid influencer campaign, they revised the policy as Facebook governing political ads, opting to let the campaigns pay online influencers to spread messages. Both Facebook and Twitter have rules against automated, that is the bots, despite the Bloomberg's campaign use of large human workforce to spread its message. The efforts of hundreds of organizers posting the same pre-approved content without bothering to personalize it creates a similar botnet type things. Well, that's the whole issue when you talk about the Russian campaign to influence voters. It is basically the same thing. There are hundreds of people out there influencing these people. At the Times inquiry about tweeters by paid organizers, Twitter determined they ran afoul of its platform spam and manipulation policy, site activities of Russian-sponsored troll networks in 17. The policy prohibits artificially boosting engagement on tweets and using deliberately misleading profile information. Suspended 70 pro Bloomberg accounts, but no doubt they'll be back. Its amazing level of spending. The Bloomberg campaign has been very effective in influencing people before he had much contact with them. That's again from Grilling of UCLA. I told my students to sign up. It's like free money. Probably the easiest $250, $2,500 they will make. But it's an open question whether paid messages can get the same results. Well, it would depend. Bessie Hoover, co-founder of Higher Ground Labs, is a progressive tech incubator that funded Outvote, and Tuesday told Wired Magazine. The organizers' spreadsheet lay out an ambitious single week's goal for 396 persons, paid outreach staff per week, over 200,000 minutes spent on phone banking application and Fruit Talk, almost 300,000 texts via Hustle, 39,000 actions on Outvote. Outvote allows users to see past of their contacts. By the end of the week, 20th February, the team had come close to its texting goal, sending out more than 42,000. A lot. Outvote, the team hit only 6% of the goal. Bloomberg campaign head said because the program is new, deputy field organizers were hired only a few weeks ago, and more are still being hired. No doubt about that. So you know where to go and find a job. Campaign outreach can be discouraging work, no doubt about that. We've done a lot of that, with most people having little time for canvases, phone calls, or door knockers. Organizers on the Central Coast said, I've gotten pretty much a rainbow of flavored of answers from A to Z, including a few letters not in the alphabet. Nobody unfriended me, she added. Pretty much it's a job and I need one. Sam Dean writing here. Anyway, that is one of the issues that you normally have. Incidentally, in that fight out in Las Vegas, the British boxer knocked out the U.S. boxer. Somewhere we have what happens when you moving around faster than you normally move around. Anyway, it's somewhere. You have a stack of papers here. Sometimes things do, in fact, get mislaid. Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. Mr. Wilder got knocked down. They threw in the towel in the 7th round, and that was the end of that there. And Mr. Tyson will give him a rematch one of these days, but perhaps he will fight someone else prior to that time here. Anyway, sort of moving on here. We've had a Code for America item here. Oh, they were looking at some dodgy campaign situations here. Let's get the Astros, and I think we brought this one in once before. The Nationals Astros arrive at the same spring training camp. Incidentally, Dusty Baker is now the manager of the Astros. This was an older one here, but in Palm Beaches, the ballpark of the Palm Beaches, two 25-foot logos, Houston Astros and Nationals. I didn't know this. A giant H with an orange behind it. Has World Champs in big letters at 2017. And the Nationals have a Kirby W. So like the Cubs use a W also. Logos remain there. Houston World Champs. Anyway, using the same training camp. Had not heard of that. Anyway, AJ Hinch's history. We'll see. They're now investigating the Sox, the Boston Red Sox, and the 2018 title. So it's all mucked up. They decided the Commissioner of Baseball, Manfred, I believe is his name, Rob Manfred, decided that he would not take the trophy back. So what is baseball doing? Trying to distance us with another ice cream cone. The MLB has messed up itself royally. When out of a transparency desperation, it floated a proposal to let more teams into the playoffs. Sometimes this trick works, such as adding a wild card team that was in 1995 to juice the game. After the 90, flippable out there. Anyway, Manfred hasn't been so lucky. On Monday, the sport floated the stupidest and most destructive and disrespectful idea that have ever been seen in a major sport inflict upon itself as a trial balloon. This is the XFL quality. Anyway, ran up the flagpole. Several ideas ran up, each dumber than the other. The first is moving the expanding playoff teams from 10 to 14. That's bad because it devalues the regular season and eventually would let near 0 to below 500 teams into October. Some of them get in anyway. And next, the team with the best overall record in both leagues, a first round bye. That flattened moronic because teams with a bye would endure perhaps 5 straight days off, during which their hitters could go cold. Disadvantage, not a reward. Next had a reality TV show on the last night of the regular season, like March Madness brackets. Oh boy, when the higher seeds would pick the team they wanted to play in a 3-game first round series. Wow. Yeah, it gets crazy every day. And anyway, what would you really have it as unworthy teams with a chance to knock off quality clubs by winning just 2 games? It is as if the Major League Baseball said our playoffs are all a flip of the coin, and we're going to maximize our flukiness so that we can cash in on it and distance the public from our cheating. Good for the game? No, but who cares? Anyway, this is getting so far, thank heaven, almost nobody has saluted these ideas, unless you count the Cincinnati Red pitcher Travis Barr, who saluted with one finger in a tweet. No idea who made this new proposal, but Rob is responsible for releasing it, so I direct it to him. You are a joke, he went on to say. Oh boy. On Wednesday, all gates to the Astro practice field were locked. On the national side, every fence was open. Just walk on in. While just a few Astros were on the field, 15 or more Nats were playing some throwing baseball sessions. No 2 teams in history of the game have ever been so physically close, yet so emotionally and ethically apart as the season started. Magic, right? Nats pitching coach Paul Minhart said last season, when a team is as close as this one was last year, it's hard to take the pulse. Well, yeah, it went down. Every team wanted their own ballpark, at least one national player, reliever. This is Sean Doolittle. Has blasted the Astros, said we need an apology, we need some real answers. Any team can have a pitcher who loads up spitball or a hitter who tests positive for PEDs, but Doolittle, who has been with the Nats since mid-2017, remember when he got there, clearly thinks his team is clean, and you would have to be nuts to throw rocks at such a time unless you thought your windows were shatterproof. Anyway, this goes on and on and on, and we finally get back. Cheaters tilt the entire field. That's why the Astros title is not just tainted, but invalidated. If it's left in the NBA record book, it would carry on its own shame for how long? 1919 Chicago White Sox are now the Black Sox. Some would argue they indeed are the White Sox. Shamed in the memory of 101 years, and many of the players had little education and played for paltry wages for a miserly owner, when the sport was young. Well, they were supplementing their degree history pits the Black Sox. Anyway, young and they were poor and they didn't do much better. In contrast, many of the Astros had plenty of education, played for princely wages in an elegant little mansion of a modern park before huge crowds in a thriving sport. They had it all except one thing. Any excuse whatsoever to cheat. There's no pity for them, nor will there be much. The Astros have already started to talk about moving past this. Hiring a Dusty Baker as a manager will help. Dusty's 70 years old, been around a long time. The World Series, because all have been banned from the sport by the Sox, were evidently purged of players who threw the series. Ken saw Mountain Atlantis there. The 2020 Astros roster will be full of stars from 2017 and 2018. As I left, I noticed one sign right beside the big curly W. It was small, bright red, and tilted to one side, and it had endured a hard life. Anyway, we'll finish up with last feast with all the ills of that flesh is their heritage too, and never easy to say stop our worst impulses, but the two giant logos here symbolize so clearly. One symbolizes brazen shame, and the other pride. A sense of honor still has its rewards. This is kind of an interesting article from the Post. I kept it around for a very long time, never got to it. Thomas Boswell wrote it, and he has some more recent ones up here. Let me just see what else we got here. Well, we already explored Bernie Sanders and the Russian situation, and let me just check one thing here. The coronavirus here, U.S. businesses business levels fall sharply amidst the virus. The Federal Reserve, incidentally, is concerned about it, and they wonder where it will all go. Anyway, nonetheless, we'll have all the news on the Numbers Man show, as they now call it, this week in economics. We'll have that, and we'll see where we go with it there. Nonetheless, have a good week, everyone. We shall talk to you soon. Boston Red and the Jared Pippin broadcast booth. Good day.